friends, welcome back to my channel. I am Michelle and I have been wanting to do this video pretty much all month, but for various reasons, my house is in disarray from moving, chronic illness, brain fog, all the things. I haven't gotten there yet. So today, because it is almost the end of May, I want to share with you some book recommendations that I have for Mental Health Awareness Month, which is in May. But really, mental health awareness needs to be something that we attend to every day. It is something I'm passionate about. My career is in the mental health field. I also personally deal with anxiety and depression, and I think that it's something that is pretty wide-reaching, and it would be surprising if most people don't either experience it themselves or know someone, either in their family or their circle of friends, who deals with mental health issues. It's nothing to be scared of. It's nothing, it's nothing that can't be supported if the resources are there. And I think one of the things about fiction is that it's hard to write good mental health representation if you haven't experienced it yourself or know someone who has, and know someone pretty intimately. I've read some books where I really did not agree with how mental health issues were represented. I've read books that I felt like were good representations, and then I've heard other people not like the representation in that same book. So some of it is a matter of, I think, choice and or personal experience. I want to share with you some books that I felt like were good representations of various mental health issues and kind of why I think they are. I definitely think that these are some books that you might want to check out. I don't have all physical copies of, and when I looked over this, I do have physical copies of some of them, but I don't know where they are. My books aren't organized yet. So I'm going to start off with fiction. And the first one I want to recommend is Summer of June by Jamie Sumner. Jamie Sumner is a middle grade author, and I've read several of her books about different disabilities, and I feel like they're pretty good representations of living with a disability. Summer of June is about a girl named June who deals with anxiety, and I was a pretty anxious kid, and I could relate to June. I don't have a physical copy of this book, and I really want to get one and read it again. I think it's great for kids, especially kids that deal with anxiety or that might, have a friend who deals with it. It's basically about June and her mom and how they deal with her anxiety over her summer break. It's a pretty short book. It's middle grade. So there's not much more to tell you about the synopsis. I think it's something that you can go into knowing just that, and find some helpful information. It's definitely something that could bring up some talking points with young teens, middle grade age. The next one I want to talk about, I do own somewhere, and it's called And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott. This looks at a mother, an Indigenous mother who is dealing with, she's not even sure. Is it postpartum depression? Is it the mental health consequences of oppression and discrimination? Is it societal expectations? There's just a lot going on for her after having her baby, and how lack of support from certain people in her life, and also some of the beliefs of her ancestors around mental health. A lot of times what I see in my work is that I work with students, and students don't want to come forward and talk about it because of certain family beliefs about mental health issues, or certain cultural beliefs about mental health issues. And then she felt can get dark. I have Alicia Elliott's memoir to read. She is someone who has talked about dealing with mental health issues herself, and I look forward to reading that, and probably will come back with a review of that at some point in the near future, because I have a lot of books I want to get to. The next one is one that was hard for me to read because it was just a hard time in my life, and I had tried to read 2 books from this author around the same time, and that was a bad call on my part. I'd only read one previous book by this author, so I wasn't fully familiar with her ability to really talk about and sink into mental health issues. And that, of course, is Kristen Hanna. I pulled out the women mainly because this talks a lot about the effects of being in a war zone has on service members. And specifically, we're following a nurse who is in Vietnam, and just the atrocities that she saw, and then coming back to the US and not receiving any care, and how she coped with the only methods that she could attain, going into like a VA type situation, Veterans Administration type setting, and being told, oh, women didn't serve in the Vietnam, when there were women there, and when they came back, they just weren't supported. Although we know that just on the whole, veterans are not getting the support they need. Their wait times are very long, but the effects of war, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is pretty rampant among our service members. And I mean, I feel like that could be a whole thing in itself, but we need to take care of our veterans. And this is a great book to look at that. I think some of the complaints about this book are that there are some romantic relationships that just aren't really needed, which I kind of agree with. But Kristen Hanna is very good at checking those emotions, writing those emotions. And so I would also say, when you're looking to read books like this, that you check in with yourself when you're reading it. For me, I ended up in a big reading slump because I tried to read 2 Kristen Hanna's around the same time, and not fault of, bad books or anything like that. It's really the fact that she's so good at writing mental health issues, characters. Her character development is amazing. Her setting, that was another thing with this book, is that you feel like you're there in the war zone with our main character. And that's hard as well, especially if you're someone who has been to a war zone or a tense environment like that. The next one I'm going to talk about is actually an author. This author is not for everyone. Not everyone agrees that she has good representation of mental health. I've never heard like straight out that's not accurate. Just it doesn't relate for some people. I really like her characters and the way that she presents anxiety. That's probably the main thing that I get from her books, is her characters are just kind of that over anxious that affects their every state of being. And that's pretty accurate, I think, for anxiety. And I'm talking about Emily Austen. So I've read Interesting Facts About Space. I've also read, and put a picture here because I don't know where my copy is. It's somewhere in the house. Everyone in this room will someday be dead. My first thought was to tell you about Everyone in the Room Will Someday Be Dead, because I feel like I liked that a little bit better. The main character is dealing with issues with job insecurity, unstable home environment, being able to afford her home, and how it affects her at work. She takes a job in a very unlikely situation and ends up working at a Catholic church. She's not Catholic at all. The person who was in the job prior to her died. And so she kind of becomes obsessed with figuring out who the person was in the role before her, but it's that obsession, and there's parts of it that make her very anxious about being followed and who is in her environment, kind of suspicious of everyone who comes around her. And that can be the case for people with anxiety. So in Interesting Facts About Space, our main character, whose name Enid, is obsessed about space, and she has this relationship with her mom that is pretty interesting. It's she witnessed a lot of her mom's mental health issues, and her and her mom have this check-in system that Enid will call her and tell her things about space. It does kind of lend itself to suspicions of Enid having autism. I think there's also pretty significant elements of anxiety in here. She does talk about the therapist relationship as well. And I just feel like Emily Austen has a way of just being very real about what her characters are thinking, what's motivating some of the things that they do. One of the things that I've heard about people that don't like Emily Austen is she has really quirky characters, and that's true too. That's true too. So I would recommend this if you like quirky characters, like kind of, there's not a ton of plot. It's really focused on the characters and what they do in their everyday life, but they're still really good. Okay, the next one I don't own a copy of, and this is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. This is about a woman who she goes through life with pretty significant depression, and we see kind of her relationships with her family, her partner, just different elements of how people respond to her and her depression and how it's impacted her life, things that she wants in life and things that she doesn't want in life. I thought it was really well done. And I can't not mention The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Not everyone loves this book. I really liked it. I read it when I was probably in high school. And it's about a girl who takes an internship at, does it say? It's basically a magazine or something in New York, and she is dealing with mental health issues and has, quote, a breakdown. Many mental health symptoms typically show up around age 18 to 24. So that's right in the same range. And there are some critics who talk about the connection between our main character Esther's life and the author Sylvia Plath. So very good book. And I am due a reread of this hopefully soon. Let's talk about nonfiction. Nonfiction is a great way to learn more about mental health issues, whether it be memoir, biography, or a historical type, like creative nonfiction. One author that I would say you could go to for this is Jenny Lawson. Jenny Lawson owns a bookstore in Texas, I think. She is definitely quirky. Her books are kind of a walkthrough of things that happen in her life as someone with mental health diagnoses, and she's funny. She's hilarious, actually. But I will say she's very, as my mother would say, colorful with her language. She loves a good four-letter word. And to me, that just makes it more humorous. But if you're someone who doesn't like cursing, don't listen to her books. But I recommend them on audiobook. The one that I liked the best was Broken. And they're just essays about things that happen in her life, dealing with mental health disorders and how it affects her parenting, how it affects her relationship with her husband. Her and her husband have been together for a long time. And so kind of how he responds to her, or has learned to respond to different kind of, whether you call them flares or episodes of depression or mania. So that's a good one. I listened to this book over Christmas while I was doing puzzles at my sister's house. It's called All That Is Wicked by Kate Winkler Dawson. This looks, and this is more of that historical type nonfiction. It's about a serial killer from the Victorian time in the US, who is accused of killing his family, his wife and child. The point of the book is that this serial killer, what is his name? Edward Rumford? I forget what his last name is. I'll put it here if I'm wrong. Researchers, doctors, psychiatrists thought that they could study a brain and like they had to study a brain to diagnose and kind of know what is, quote, wrong with a serial killer, someone who would do these crimes. Because he is accused of killing other people than just his wife and child. It was really interesting, really well done, and it goes into pretty deep historical context of the shape and venture of psychiatry at the time. And it's really interesting to hear, as someone who now works in psychological treatments, just how far we've come and how far we still need to go. I will also mention The Rebels Clinic by what was his name? Schatz. I'll put it down here. Adam Schatz, I think. I read this through as one of the books that I was reviewing for the BookTube prize, and it's about Frank Franz, who I think more is known about his political affiliations, and he was from Martinique, and he was fought for the French, and then fought with, or led some rebellion with Algeria against France. Wrote some pretty historical essay type collections and philosophical books. But one of the things that I really was interesting to me in the book was about he's trained as a psychiatrist, and there is a mentor that he works under who had turned like a psychiatric hospital, which typically is very dull, sad places where they over medicate patients, and the care is really subpar, and so much so that many of them have been shut down. Not all of them, but many of them have been shut down. But his mentor made it more of a community feel, where patients were encouraged to come out of their rooms and not on so much medication, and could take classes and grow garden and things like that. And I really liked that part of the Rebels Clinic. It does go into much more historical things about Algeria's fight for independence. But if you're interested in those topics, the Rebels Clinic was a good one. Another memoir I read was called Devout, A Memoir of Doubt by Anna Gazmarian. I read this, it was a NetGalley book for me back last year sometime, and it's about Anna's experience as a Christian being diagnosed with a mental health disorder, and the church that she attended, and much of my experience in the Christian church, this is pretty relatable, is that if you are diagnosed with depression, anxiety, bipolar, any of those things, then you're not praying hard enough. You're not doing enough religiously for God to heal you, which is not true. And she goes through some ups and downs with her faith and the reactions from people she loves and was mentored by in her church. It was hard hitting. It was kind of slow in places, but I also really appreciated it took some good looks at searching for a counselor and a therapist that works for you. Not everybody's going to work for you. I can tell you for myself, I do have a counselor that I have met with for 6 years, but it took me many years of the wrong therapist. And right before I met this therapist, I tried 6 different ones. And that was right when I became my mom's caregiver. I knew I needed some mental health support. And yeah, it took me a long time to get to the person that I see now. And I see her now for just check-ins, which is always good to have someone to check in with on just what's going on for you. And then the last one is one that was one of my favorites of last year. It was called Divided Minds by Pamela Shapiro Wagner and Carolyn Shapiro. This is about a set of twins, identical twins, who one of them is more the outgoing one of them's shy when they're younger, and then the one who is more outgoing starts to develop some pretty significant mental health symptoms, and kind of that process of being the sibling of someone, but it's told from both perspectives. So Pamela is the one who develops, in the book, it's schizophrenia. But looking at that from her perspective as someone with schizophrenia, and then Carolyn's perspective as kind of being the emergency contact for this person who goes in and out of your life due to mental health issues. And it was really insightful. I listened to the audiobook, so I definitely recommend the audiobook. Then I also wanted to mention one that I did read on audio many years ago. I feel like when it came out, which was in 2019. My memory's just bad. And I don't remember as much about it. So I had gotten a physical copy of it, and I plan to reread it this year. And that is The Collected Schizophrenias by Esme Weijing Wang. Esme is a great person to follow on social media. She's pretty open about her experience with mental health symptoms. Doctors, raise your hand if you're a woman and you've never been doubted by a doctor, because you're in the minority. So I think that this is a great resource to go to, and one that I'm anxious to get back to. Just following Esme Wang on her social media. She's gone through a lot of doctors, a lot of treatments, a lot of diagnoses, because sometimes it's just really hard to pin it down. Sometimes it's hard to get people to believe you. So I have talked for a very long time, and I could talk for hours about this. Let me know in the comments if you have any recommendations for good mental health representation in fiction or nonfiction, and we'll share resources together. I hope you're doing well and taking care of yourself, and I'll see you soon. Bye.